Welcome to Cinematic Recaps. This movie is called Out of Sight. The movie is about a bank robber named Jack Foley who busts out of jail with the help of his buddy and kidnaps a U.S. Marshal in the process. They heads off to Detroit to pull off their final big scam. The Marshal is put on their case, but she gets attracted to one of them and has second thoughts about bringing them in. Sit back and enjoy to see what happens. As the film opens, a small-time criminal named Jack Foley emerges from an office building, takes off his necktie, and tosses it on the ground. He enters a bank in the area and spends some time looking around the lobby. He approaches a teller's window and warns the clerk that his accomplice is seated with her manager and that the guy would shoot her employer if she disobeys his orders. She is instructed by Foley to remove all of the money from the cash drawer and place the bills in the bottom of the stacks. Assuring her that she is doing a fine job, Foley accepts the money and exits after briefly pausing to speak with the man he described as his accomplice. The man is unaware of Foley's existence. In his haste to get away from the situation, Foley floods the engine of his automobile when he attempts to start it outside the bank. Foley is taken into custody by a police officer with a pistol drawn, and he does so without resistance. The action fast-forwards to Foley being a prisoner at the Florida's Glades Correctional Complex 2 years earlier. He appears to come to the realization that he doesn't want to end up like the old-time lifers as he surveys the group while watching them play basketball with other prisoners while playing basketball. He notices Chino and Lulu, 2 other prisoners, running by. Later, when he speaks to them, he admits that he is aware of their escape plan. Just beyond the main security barrier, just beyond where they intend to emerge once they have tunneled out, another security fence is being built. Foley offers to accompany them in return for his silence on the breakout. Foley does inform a guard about the scheme, asking him to meet him that evening in the prison chapel. U.S. Marshal Karen Cisco dines with her father, a retired U.S. Marshal, in Miami. He presents her with a Sig Sauer handgun for her birthday. He also asks her about a married Marshal named Ray Nicolette who she had been dating. Karen tells her father to stop talking about it since he doesn't agree. She also explains to him that she has to follow up on a case in Glades Correctional. Arriving at Glades is Karen. Foley's old pal Buddy also shows up in the jail parking lot in a stolen Cadillac. While Foley stands guard, Lulu and Chino have already started to leave the prison chapel. When the guard Foley had instructed to visit the church shows up, Foley instructs him to keep an eye on the fence line. The guard is struck by Foley with a huge face, which causes him to pass unconscious. Cisco notices the guys coming out of their tunnel from beyond the gate and tells the tower guards. 2 guys are shot, while 2 more flee, including a Chino. The other guards are informed that there are no immigrants left in the tunnel by Foley, who emerges while wearing the guard's uniform. Foley moves toward Cisco, who is brandishing a shotgun. Karen is diverted by Foley for a little period of time, which allows Buddy to grab her from behind and shove her into the trunk of her car. After her, Foley creeps inside. Buddy shoos them off. Foley and Karen had a protracted talk about inmates and movies in the trunk. In order to meet Glenn Michaels, another ex-convict who is waiting with another automobile, Buddy pauses beneath a highway bridge where they are headed. Karen pulls the revolver her father had handed her out as soon as Foley steps out of the trunk. Foley is able to lock her inside the trunk by slamming the lid shut. When she agrees to surrender herself, they let her go. Glenn and Karen were placed in the automobile. Buddy and Foley discuss what to do with Karen for a short while. Buddy doesn't think she feels the same way about him as Foley, despite their mutual attraction. Glenn abruptly departs in a car with Karen, leaving the 2 of them stranded. Back in Miami, Buddy and Jack visit Buddy's apartment. Foley relaxes by taking a hot bath. Foley is in the tub when Karen enters with her revolver pulled. She gives him a quick once-over before approaching to arrest him when all of a sudden he opens his eyes and smiles at her. In a hospital bed with her father lying next to her, Karen awakens. She queries him as to what she stated, and he inquires as to what she was dreaming about. "Hey back," her father responds. After briefly losing consciousness, Karen tells Burden, her supervisor, what transpired while Glenn and Karen were in the car. He had convinced Glenn to leave Buddy and Foley behind after recognizing Glenn from a prior prisoner transfer. Glenn complied, but they got into a disagreement regarding the best course of action. Karen gripped the wheel in an attempt to coerce Glenn into taking an exit when they were both in a panic. Karen had a mild concussion after the automobile lost control, crashed into a water barrier, and she banged her head inside the vehicle. Burden, Karen's novice supervisor, expresses some skepticism. Jack searches through Karen's handbag at Buddy's apartment and discovers a photo of her father. Jack resists Buddy's attempts to convince him that they must leave town right now because he wants to see Karen one final time. They have a brief discussion when Jack phones her at home. She advises him to give himself in, but Jack declines. Karen hears Buddy's voice in the background as he abruptly starts speaking. Even more urgent is their need to flee. Jack disconnects. A news of a raid on a squatter's camp is playing on the television. Among the deceased is Lulu. Jack understands that Lulu could be connected to Chino in jail. Chino was informed of Adele, Jack's ex-wife, and her residence by Jack. Jack is also aware that Adele will soon be located by the U.S. Marshal Service. Adele served as a magician's assistant for a number of years, and Chino appears to be fixated on the sawing a lady in half trick, seeking to learn the technique directly from Adele. Chino locates Adele's apartment and rushes there, but Karen arrives before and queries Adele about Jack's whereabouts. Chino bangs on Adele's door repeatedly. When Chino breaks in, Karen encourages Adele to wait so that she may arrest and handcuff him right away. Her request to join the task force hunting for Buddy and Jack is made over the phone to Burden. Karen asks Burden if he'll let her join the squad if she brings Chino, but he declines. Burden and his squad are at Buddy's apartment complex closing in on Buddy's apartment, and Burden assigns Karen to keep watch in the lobby. Buddy and Jack have already left the room and are taking the elevator to the parking garage. When the elevator stops at lobby level, Karen sees Jack, who also notices her. Jack and Buddy reach the vehicle and drive off. Jack and Buddy travel to Detroit with the goal of meeting up with Maurice Snoopy Miller, a fellow prisoner. They also intend to track down Richard Ripley, another ex-offender, a successful businessman who has served time for theft. He had told Glenn about a tiny fortune and uncut diamonds that he stored in his Detroit house while he was imprisoned. Glenn, however, revealed the knowledge, and Snoopy also plans to defraud Ripley. Snoopy informs Glenn that he will be taking over the theft when the two are traveling around Detroit in a limousine. At first, Glenn is resistive, but he soon becomes extremely intimidated. Additionally, Snoopy insists that Glenn go with them on a job where they would kill a transvestite who rivals Snoopy for control of a drug-dealing zone. Glenn accomplishes this, and the task proves to be more brutal and dangerous than he had anticipated thanks to Snoopy and his goons, one of whom is Kenneth, his brother-in-law. He travels with Snoopy to the Kronk gym where they run into Jack and Buddy. The group decides to get together the next night at a boxing event to discuss the scheme to take Ripley's riches. After arriving in Detroit, Karen consults a colleague about locating Jack. While cleaning up the murder scene Snoopy and Glenn left earlier in the day, the agent, Raymond Cruz, informs her he'll receive an address. When Karen visits Snoopy's house, Moselle informs her that she hasn't seen Maurice in a while but that he could show up to the boxing events at the State Theater the next night. Kenneth is also at the residence. He confirms Moselle's account and tells her to go to the store. He tries to push himself on Karen when Moselle departs, but she smacks him with a little police baton before leaving. Back at her hotel, Karen rebuffs a couple businessmen's approaches while they are at the bar by letting one of them know she is aware he is married. They have a drink together when Foley silently enters the room. They resume their sexual activity in her chamber. Karen gets out of bed and starts to wonder why Foley had sex with her. She gets his assurance that he wasn't just gone for the night. He left a 6-hour handgun he had taken from her in Florida and departed in the morning. Glenn travels to the State Theater with Maurice to watch boxing matches. Glenn immediately exits the state after requesting permission to use the men's room. He discovers Karen waiting for him while attempting to hotwire the automobile Maurice had taken from him. Glenn admits that Maurice genuinely frightens him and that all he wants to do is go. Additionally, he informs her that they want to burglarize Ripley's home. Karen releases Glenn since she thinks he won't cause any more problems. Buddy and Jack raid Ripley's home. As they ride along, Jack recalls visiting Ripley at his Miami office. While he was still incarcerated, Ripley had promised Jack a position with his company after he was released. Jack is upset to learn that Ripley wants him to work as a security guard for a reduced salary. Jack is enraged, believing that Ripley owes him more since he helped him while he was imprisoned. Jack is a repentant felon who is unfit for meaningful employment, Ripley argues icily. Security rushes Jack outside, and he makes his way toward the bank he robbed in the opening scene. After the battles at the state, Jack and Buddy encounter Kenny and White Boy Bob, two of Morris's associates. Buddy and Foley are convinced that once they have stolen anything, Snoopy would have them both murdered. Karen goes after them. They proceed to Ripley's estate, where Bob, who is impersonating a plumber, barges in despite Midge, Ripley's housekeeper, objecting. When Maurice wonders where Ripley is, Midge responds that he is spending the winter in Florida. She is compelled by the team to accompany them to Ripley's safe in his bedroom. Buddy and Foley are tasked by Maurice with inspecting the remaining rooms in the house. Maurice discovers the safe in Ripley's closet hidden under several suits. Before they can start firing on their second attempt, he, Kenny, and Bob attempt to shoot the door open. The combination, according to Midge, is Ripley's birth date. They only discover Ripley's hairpieces when they finally unlock the safe. Maurice exits the space in search of Foley. When Jack walks into Ripley's office, he discovers Ripley waiting for 911 in a small restroom. Jack states that he is aware that Ripley has stashed his collection of uncut diamonds in the huge fish tank in the office when Buddy discovers them both. Jack believes they can sneak away before Maurice discovers them, so he has Buddy get them and transport them to the vehicle. Jack had a crisis of conscience while he is outside the vehicle and thinks that Maurice is going to kill Ripley and Midge while potentially gang-raping Midge beforehand. Buddy is told to take the jewels and go by him. Buddy hands him a gun before driving off. Foley returns home and makes his way upstairs to the bedroom. Midge is being coerced into bed by Kenny. When Foley cries for Midge, Kenny uses his sawed-off shotgun to shoot through the door, missing Foley. Kenny is the first person Foley has ever killed. He goes in and shoots Kenny dead. Bob stops Foley as he is returning to the main stairway. As Bob starts to gallop up the stairs, he falls and shoots himself beneath his chin. Rushing to the scene, Maurice opens fire on Foley. When none of them can take any more bullets, they start to fight. Maurice swiftly gains the upper hand because to his boxing prowess. Foley discovers Kenny's gun, and while Bob grabs Morris's, he can't outrun Foley, who kills him. Karen also appears and orders Jack to give up. Jack begs Karen to murder him since he doesn't want to go back to prison, but she refuses and shoots Jack in the leg instead. Another officer tackles Jack and puts him in handcuffs. Jack is scheduled to return to Florida in a few days to face charges related to his Lompoc escape. He is placed in a vehicle in which Karen will also travel. Hedgera is the final prisoner to be loaded into the vehicle before they depart. When Jack inquires about the origin of his name, he replies that Hedgera refers to the Prophet Muhammad's journey from Mecca in the 7th century. Hedgera continues by telling Jack that he has managed to break out of jail at least 9 times. Hedgera was placed in the vehicle with Jack, according to Jack, since Karen knew they would have a lot to speak about on the lengthy trip to Florida. Karen smiles in the front seat as they go, and that is the end of this movie. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for weekly updates of movie recaps like this. Comment what movie you want next. Thanks for watching.